Recording. Hello again, and thank you for joining us, everyone, especially Will Nelson from the county. And we appreciate your time, your presentation. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry that your colleague could not join us, but it's okay. So please, you can get us started now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, yeah, I'm sorry Maureen couldn't be here. She is also a Pinole City Councilwoman, and so she
Oh, wow.
had, she had a commitment tonight that I think she didn't expect when we made the plans with you.
Mhm.
But I am here, and
Thank
I appreciate the invitation. We're
you,
always
of
excited to
course.
talk about Envision Contra Costa 2040. So I have a slideshow, and then I have some maps of El Sobrante that I would like to show, and then I can answer any questions you have. If that sounds like a plan.
Great, great
So,
plan. Thank you.
all right. So here, let me get the slideshow uh, going here. Actually, hold on. Okay, screen share. All right, you should see the PowerPoint, and
Yes.
I'm going to start it here. All right, so I'll just jump into it then. Envision Contra Costa 2040 is an update to three um, important planning documents: the County General Plan, the Zoning Code, and the Climate Action Plan. And all of those will be evaluated through an environmental impact report. The Board of Supervisors authorized us, or directed us really, back in December of 2017 to undertake this project. So we've already been at it for quite some time now. Um, for those of you who don't know, who have never heard of what about a general plan, you might wonder what it is. So it is commonly referred to as the Constitution for land use. It's an agency's highest land use planning document. So all of the decisions that the county makes related to land use have to be consistent with its adopted general plan. And it establishes goals. It's both pragmatic and aspirational. It's a 20-year document, so it deals with the here and now, in addition to, or also, where we want to be 20 years from now. So that's the vision part and the goals. And it has policies and actions that support that. So the policies are the rules, and then the actions are sort of what we call the to-do list, the things that we're going to do along the way to help us get there to achieve these goals. Provides consistent direction for development and balances conservation, growth, quality of life. It really is, and then in a county as diverse as Contra Costa, that's quite a task. So why is it important? Sort of piggybacking on what I just said, the general plan affects our housing and job opportunities. It deals with community services, roadway design and construction. There's a health and safety element that addresses natural hazards, resource conservation, really anything in both the built environment and a lot of the non-built environment is affected by the general plan and the policies that the Board of Supervisors adopts within the general plan. So why are we updating it now? The current general plan, actually, I always say existing because there's nothing really current about the general plan. It's 30 years old. It was adopted in January of 1991, which means that it really reflects 1980s thinking. And as planners, we do things a lot differently now than they did in the 80s. Back then, you were still talking about your sprawl, your single family, auto dependent subdivisions, your post World War II development pattern. And now we are pretty much done with that. We are more about infill, mixed use, higher densities, and preserving the more of the natural environment around us. But in addition to the document just being dated and not reflecting current planning practice, there are many, many laws that have been uh, passed in the last 3 decades, but particularly in this century, a lot of them having to do with global warming. And that's what really the first 4 in that list are: AB 32, SB 375, SB 743, and AB 379. And then there's SB 1000, dealing with environmental justice, which is a big topic that we'll be addressing in our general plan. There's always new legislation coming out regarding housing. If you pay attention at all to the news, hundreds of bills are coming out of Sacramento every year related to housing. And then Also, in these last few decades, there have been many plans adopted or updated, a lot of that didn't even exist when our general plan was originally adopted, but that we have to at least be somewhat consistent with. And these are all sorts of regional plans having to do with the delta, sea level rise, air quality management, all sorts of things. So a lot of reasons to update the general plan now. So the general plan has several chapters. They're called elements in the statute. So on the left, we have the required elements: land use, transportation, safety, noise, open space, conservation, and housing. The state requires us to have those. Now you can mix and match, you can combine them, you can give them different names, but the topic, the content that is in the law has to be there. Once you have your 7 required elements, then you can also have as many optional elements as you want. And the county general plan has 2 optional elements: growth management and public facilities and services. And then in our new general plan, we'll have a new element called stronger communities. So here is a map of the county. This is the land use map. Anyone who has dealt with the general plan might have dealt with this part of the plan. And this is a map of land use across the county. So all the different colors represent different things. So as you can see, well, first of all, a lot of it's grayed out. Those are the incorporated cities, the grayed out area. They have their own general plans and are not under the county's jurisdiction. Excuse me, battling a little bit of a cold here. So our jurisdiction is the part that you see in color. And as you can see, a lot of it it's these different shades of green, or maybe it shows up as brown for you, blue. That's all rural area for the most part. So that sort of emerald green is your East Bay Regional Park District land and Mount Diablo. The big blue, kind of lighter blue patches are watersheds for our major reservoirs. The kind of brownish color, olive drab color, is agricultural land, as is there's a greenish color over on the east side of the county, a big patch there. That's the ag core. That's our best agricultural land. But then when you get closer in, you start seeing these other colors, red and purple, lavender, sort of these various shades of brown. Those are your residential, commercial, industrial land use designations. So you actually can see very easily that most of the land is not devoted to development. Most of it is rural uses or protected land. But what you can really glean quickly from this map, so each of these residential colors has a density attached to it. So you might have single family development of such and such units per acre, 5 to 7 units per acre is one of the categories, or multifamily up to 29 per acre. Your red is commercial. The purple, which sticks out because those are the refineries, and of course they're big pieces of land. That's your heavy industrial. And so you can look at this and see what housing density is by looking at the residential colors. And for non-residential, we measure things, it's called floor area ratio. It's the amount of square footage you can have on a parcel. So you can kind of get a sense from looking at this map, what the intensity of development is all over the county. So when the Board of Supervisors directed us to prepare a new general plan, they directed us to incorporate 4 themes throughout it. And these are the 4 themes: economic development, environmental justice, sustainability, and community health. The existing general plan speaks very little to any of these, does not talk about environmental justice at all, has maybe a bit about sustainability because of a couple amendments over the years. Community health is not really addressed. Economic development just a little bit. So it was very important to the Board of Supervisors that we incorporate these. So going back to that list of elements or chapters, the stronger communities element is going to be where these sort of live, where all the background information is for these things like charts and graphs and explanations of what these are about. But the policies will be strewn throughout the plan. So next is the zoning code. The county zoning code was adopted in 1947 and has never been comprehensively updated. It's been it's had amendments over the years for all sorts of reasons, because of statutes or just to address issues that have come up, but there's never been a comprehensive rewrite in all this time. So we're doing that as well. And the zoning code consists of the zoning map, which is similar to the general plan land use map. and zoning districts. And each of these different districts has rules about development, about how much development you can do, what the permitted uses are, the site-specific design development requirements, so like setbacks, height limitations, parking requirements, fencing, signage, lighting, all that sort of thing is discussed in the zoning code. Other sections of it talk about what the permitting requirements are, what you have to do to get a permit for such and such use on such and such property. And so the zoning code really implements the general plan. It gets a finer level of detail. So going back to that general plan map, where a general plan map might say, single family residential of this density, the zoning code will say, or well, I take that back. The new general plan won't say single and multifamily anymore for the residential part. It'll just say residential with a density. But your zoning code is still going to go in and say, okay, this is single family over here, this is multifamily over here, and here's what your development regulations are. So it gets into that finer level of detail, as I said. And the final document that we're going to update is the Climate Action Plan. And this is the plan for the county to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. This plan was actually adopted in 2015, in December of 2015. So our cap is pretty new, but it's already showing its age. There's been new legislation, there are new CO2 or greenhouse gas, I should say, reduction strategies available. We of course have to integrate it with our other two planning documents. So, we didn't want to have, we want them to all be new and talking to each other, not one that's even just a couple years old. And also we have had a few years to work with it now and have realized some of its shortcomings. So we are going to update the Climate Action Plan with the other two documents. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it'll all be covered by an environmental impact report. The California Environmental Quality Act requires us to prepare an EIR that analyzes the impacts of these policy changes. So that will be prepared after the other documents are prepared, well, after the general plan and climate action plan are prepared. There will be a public review, a 30-day, it's called the scoping period. That'll be coming up in a couple months, where people can comment to the county on what the EIR should analyze. And then once we prepare the draft EIR next year, then there will be at least a 45-day comment period on that, where the public has the opportunity to tell us whether we made any mistakes, whether if there's anything else we should have analyzed or something we should have analyzed better. So that's coming up over the next several months. Opportunities for public involvement. Again, excuse me. The website envisioncontracosta2040.org is the best way to get involved. Tons of great information on that website. And there's also a place to sign up for our mailing list. I'll get to that in a second. We have community meetings. We've already had a handful in El Sobrante before the pandemic. I think we had at least 3, maybe 4 in El Sobrante. Those community meetings were just really open. We asked people, tell us what you love about El Sobrante. Tell us the things you'd like to see changed. And we had some really good turnout for those meetings. It was great. The focused meetings, those focus on those 4 themes. So economic development, environmental justice, community health, and sustainability. We haven't had any of those since February, but we did just have a meeting yesterday with one of the Board of Supervisors subcommittees to talk about environmental justice. That segues into our standing county bodies. So we've got the Sustainability Commission. They're addressing issues of environmental justice and sustainability for the general plan, the County Planning Commission, and then the Board of Supervisors. And they're the ones who will ultimately approve or adopt these updated documents. So as I was saying, online participation at envisioncontracosta2040.org /online-engagement. You can sign up for the mailing list. That is the best way to get involved. You can mark whether you just want to receive information about El Sobrante or announcements for the general plan update as it pertains to the whole county. There are a lot of tools on here to get involved. There are surveys. There's a mapping tool. That's what's shown here, where you can click on a spot and tell us what you think about it. Do you want to see it? Could it be changed, or could it be improved? Do you want it to stay the same? You can upload pictures, all sorts of things. There's we did an open house way back in 2019, in May of 2019. the open house questions are online. So pretty much anything we've done in person, you can go online and participate in. So what's next? Here we're in the process of writing the goals, policies, and actions for the general plan. We just got the first draft of those at the end of March, and we've been going through an internal county review. Now we're going through all those internal county comments and putting together a set to give back to our consultant to work on further. Fall and winter, we'll be working on the full drafts of the general plan, climate action plan, and EIR. And spring and summer, they'll be of next year, they'll be out for public review. And then at the end of 2022, maybe beginning of 2023 is when we're looking at adoption of those documents. And so the county planning commission meetings, we were hoping to start on July 28th, but I'm thinking it might be a couple weeks later, in the beginning of August now, for those county planning commission meetings to review the draft goals, policies, and actions. So that is it for my regular presentation. However you'd like to do this, I could take questions now, or I could share the maps that I've brought of El Sobrante, the draft general plan maps. Here's just the contact information for me and my colleagues who are working on this.
Thank you. I'll share it with the community along with the URL. So if you could share the specific map of El Sobrante and what's changing about the zoning in our area, that'd be great.
Right. So we don't have a new zoning map yet. I'm going to have to stop the share for a moment while I get to the maps. The zoning map hasn't been prepared yet, but the general plan map has. And since the zoning has to be consistent with the general plan, what you're seeing with the general plan is generally where you're going to see the
general plan. That's what I meant. Yes.
El Sobrante, we actually had to split it into two different maps. So first, I'm going to show the current map of kind of the northern part of El Sobrante. So let me get back to the screen share here. So I hope you can see this map.
Yes, could you tell us what's being
changed?
Okay.
Well, yeah, so so here's the existing map, and as you can see, it's quite a patchwork along Appian, along San Pablo Dam Road. You have these areas that are gray. Those are mixed use of different densities, but you see they're interspersed with all kinds of other parcels that aren't mixed use. But most of it, where you see, I hope you can see my cursor where here it says SH, that's single family high density. Over here, SL, single family low density, single family medium density. Yeah, as we all know, most of El Sobrante is single family, right? So the new, or the draft map of the northern part, let's see. Can you see this new draft map that looks a lot simpler? Mm-hmm. So as you can see, a lot of those colors are now gone, and they are replaced with mixed use, mostly all up and down Appian and San Pablo Dam Road. Well, not the entire way, obviously, but you can see where my cursor stops here. Most of the changes outside of the gray area is that we were just matching to reality. So, you know, if you remember on the last map, this entire area that I'm kind of circling here with my cursor was called single family high density. Well, when we went in and actually looked at what the densities are, it turns out, well, it's not all single family high density. So we have new land use designations. The single and multifamily are gone. As I was saying earlier, we're condensing our 11 current designations into 7 new ones. And so, you know, a lot of this area is now called residential low medium density. This is residential medium density, residential low density. You actually see that the high is pretty much gone from the names. But that doesn't mean the density, the density in a lot of these places is the same. But here, for example, RM, before that was 5 to 7.2 units per acre. Now it's 7 to 17 units per acre. And much of that is because the density of these lots actually is greater than the 7.2 that the map showed before. So really for the single family residential areas, it was changing the map to match reality. For the mixed use area, it is or the main thoroughfares, it's changing it to be all mixed use instead of the patchwork, because that is really a nightmare for everyone, for regulators like me, for people who want to come in and do a project. From one parcel to the next, having a different designation is just a problem. And part of this is that we are trying to simplify development. We have a housing crisis. We have the state has given us a number of 7,600 units that we have to plan for over the next 8 years, and we have to find places for those. And so, along Appian and San Pablo Dam Road is one of the places in the county that we see as an opportunity for that. That is the main change. It is making all of it mixed use there. Let me share. Yeah, sorry.
Well, could you expand a little? First of all, I have some questions. I bet the other audience might have similar questions. Why is the mixed use not extending, like on San Pablo Dam Road to the west? There's an area. I understand south is city of San Pablo, I guess, but north of it is also Sobrante. It's not mixed use. And then coming to the east on San Pablo Dam Road, close to Castro Ranch, again, mixed use is not extending, same on Appian Way. So why is that?
These are because these are sort of the, bound by the existing commercial areas. So we weren't extending, because the mixed use allows residential or commercial use. And so, the goal has not been to extend it to introduce commercial uses where there are mainly residential uses. So like over in the eastern part here, or to go beyond the triangle. Obviously this is all residential back here. In addition, there was a planning effort made in El Sobrante about 8 years ago now. I think those plans were adopted, which initially put in the mixed use designations. So we're really just working with the areas that were the boundaries of those mixed use designations. And then we did extend it a little down here on San Pablo Dam Road, if I go back to the other map. But that's the main reason, was just to, kind of do it in the commercial, sort of the commercial core area.
Could you zoom in on those areas so people can see?
Sure.
If you could zoom in a bit further. Okay, yeah, if you go to that corner on the southeast a bit, right, like that green patch.
Yeah, so the green
Commercial.
patch is
Sorry, red. I'm talking about the red. Green must be San Pablo Creek. But the red one, why, if it's commercial, why can't we build housing on top of it?
That area, actually, I think in our final version of this, we did change it. This one is January 14th. We haven't updated these maps, but we've updated our electronic map, and we did in fact change that to mixed use, that commercial area. So basically everything that was commercial before, we introduced the possibility of housing.
Okay, and PS stands for?
Public and semi-public. So schools, libraries, things like that.
All right. Do you have other maps?
I can interrupt for a second. What does CO mean? What is the red area there, Will?
Commercial.
Commercial, okay.
That's what we just talked about. They're going to change it to mixed use.
Yeah.
So do you have other maps, or should we go to questions now?
So the only other map is as you can see, this kind of cuts off the southern portion of town. So I do have the southern portion of town. Can you see that now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so and this also gets in other communities like East Richmond Heights, but now we're seeing as we go further south here, farther out San Pablo Dam Road. So the change that we were talking about here, the CO and also this one, RMH. I believe we changed that to mixed use. And if I'm not mistaken, that is a vacant parcel. There might be a church on it, on one of those parcels. I think there are two parcels here.
Mhm.
One's vacant and one's a church.
Right.
So we're also changing that to mixed use. So you get a little patch of it over here. Excuse me. But these are developed, these versus RMH, that's residential, medium, high density. Those are established residential developments for the most part. So we weren't going to change those. As I said, it was introducing the residential use to commercial areas.
And how do you decide if it's low density residential or high density, yellow versus the other color?
So for everything but the mixed use, it was based on pretty much what the density is now. It was making the map match reality. For the mixed use areas, we had to choose one, and we have 3 different mixed use designations. And let me stop the screen share again for a moment. And actually, while I'm pulling that up, I think we could talk about our or I could field some questions.
Sure. Angela, you have a question? Go ahead, please.
I do have a question. My main concern with with just Appian Way, period, is we have no sidewalks left because parking has pretty much taken over the area. So is that something that will be considered when, you guys are making your plans and adjustments? Because literally there's no sidewalks left on Appian Way.
Yeah. So new development well, there's kind of 2 answers to that question. So when you have new development, they have to do improvements to the frontage typically. And so that could include, new sidewalks, curb and gutter, whatever the improvements are necessary or appropriate for that location. Now, there's a law that was passed by the state a few years ago that requires us also to build what are called complete streets. And those are streets that allow use by all users. So it's not just automobile focused anymore, but it's pedestrians, bicyclists, people with mobility concerns. And so it is something that we will plan for. But to redo an entire right of way does take quite a while.
So only
Okay.
when someone is making a new building, they're supposed to put sidewalk in front? Because San Pablo Dam Road has the same issue.
Yeah.
You cannot walk along, and now many residents are very concerned about safety.
Yeah. So this is all in the county ordinance code. It talks about all these public improvements that you have to make when you do a development. And so sometimes it's just matching what's there. Sometimes it is, sometimes there's nothing there and you have to build it new. And when I say matching what's there, it's like if you have a property here and then, the adjacent one has whatever improvements, you would just extend them, across your frontage. But, something that is in the existing general plan about El Sobrante and what's being carried forward is this idea of creating really a town center and a walkable community, a walkable downtown that's pedestrian friendly. And, that is being carried forward to this new general plan. So the thing is, though, often that sort of thing doesn't happen until you get development, because the county typically does not come in and, rebuild sidewalks for a couple miles of road or anything like that. It's usually you get that when a developer wants to do a project that we require them to do those sort of improvements.
Okay, and I'm just curious, why is it that county doesn't come to build sidewalks for us?
Money. I mean, to be honest, there's only so much of it and there's a lot of demand. And so, the county might come in and build, we do like sidewalk gap closures. So, if there's sidewalk here and there, maybe there's a 50-foot gap or something like that. And especially around schools, safe access to schools is something that's very important. But there just there's not enough resources for us to just build sidewalks in all communities.
I understand that. But my thing is I mean, it's all great to have a walkable downtown, but if you can't walk to the downtown because there's no sidewalks or there's no sidewalks to safely walk there, I mean, it's basically drive to the downtown and walk around down there. I mean,
Yeah.
if you can't safely walk there, what's the point of focusing on having a walkable downtown?
Well, I mean but yeah, no, your point is well taken. But I think that is possible. You know, I think of a place like Walnut Creek where they have a few big parking structures where they'd prefer that you park, really. And then, then you get out of your car there, it's left in the garage, and then you do have a walkable downtown area. And so, but point taken, I mean, if you live in one of the, neighborhoods in El Sobrante, that walking down to Appian or to San Pablo Dam Road might be a problem. But the goal would be that at least once you get there, they're pedestrian friendly, walkable, exciting corridors.
Very good. Thank you. I have some questions, but if other people have questions, Christy, go ahead, please.
Hi there. I wanted to check in about land use and if any of that's going to be permitted for tiny homes or tiny houses on wheels through Contra Costa County in the El Sobrante area in the future.
Yeah. So one of the reasons that we're dropping the single and multifamily names from the general plan is exactly this, that we are going to start seeing a lot more projects that don't fit well into either one. So single family homes, detached little tiny units, but at multifamily densities. In fact, we have one of these proposed in North Richmond where they want to do, I think it's 22 on, gosh, I don't even remember what the size of the site is now, but it's a pretty small site in North Richmond where they want to do 22 tiny homes or micro units, also as they call them. So yeah, that's going to be one of the things we're looking at going forward is all these different new housing types. And so we want to actually start being a little less specific in the general plan to allow for these things that we also haven't even thought of yet. So that's why we're just going to say residential at a certain density.
Thank you. Chris, please.
Yeah, thank you for the talk, Will. It's very informative, and especially the link to that page is helpful. I was wondering, is there a specific policy or proposals that are dealing with beautification specifically along the corridors, the central corridors of the town, like maybe some landscaping, murals, some consistency to the way things look, or any architectural flourishes, or like the welcome to El Sobrante signage being improved? Yeah,
so there are design guidelines already for El Sobrante that were adopted a few years ago. One of the new features of the new general plan, well, let me take a step back. In the existing general plan, there's a section called policies for specific geographic areas. And there's a section for El Sobrante and has quite a few policies. We are getting rid of that section in the new general plan and instead replacing it with something called community profiles. And the community profiles are like mini plans for the various unincorporated communities throughout the county. And in fact, one of those community meetings that I mentioned at the beginning was the focus was to go over the El Sobrante community profile. So on the Envision Contra Costa 2040 website, if you go to the documents button on the front page, actually, you know what? I can screen share and just walk everyone through it. Here, I'm going to screen share again real quick. So here we are on the front page of Envision Contra Costa 2040. So there's this button, Documents. If you hit that button and scroll all the way to the bottom, you have the draft community profiles. And here we have El Sobrante. So you click on that, and this is what these sort of miniature plans for the various communities are going to look like. So we have a section with context, a little history, a little demographic information, map of the community. Then we get into natural hazards that the community is facing. Excuse me again, I'm sorry. And then we get into the land use section. And so the plan land use part here will describe really what the adopted general plan map is for the area, and what we're trying to achieve, what the community is trying to achieve in El Sobrante. But then this section over here, downtown El Sobrante planned uses at Appian Way, all this is out of the existing general plan. These 3 planning areas, Appian Way, the Triangle, and San Pablo Dam Road. And here they are shown. This also is outdated. It doesn't extend the mixed use that came later. And then you get into what you're asking about. So guiding principles. So if you read through this, this is really what we heard at these community meetings, what's important to the people of El Sobrante. That's what we have been trying to capture in these guiding principles. And then you get the policies. The policies are the rules. And so, as you can see here, encourage and prioritize small and locally owned businesses, combine parcels to make them more developable. But when we get further down, let's see, we have parks. Let's see, I believe, and actually improve the pedestrian bicycle environment, particularly along the major thoroughfares, closing gaps in the system, widening sidewalks, etc. That goes back to the question earlier. It's the first action here. Continue to work with residents, businesses, property owners, and other stakeholders on improvement and beautification plans for San Pablo Dam Road, including the addition of bike lanes, pedestrian crossings, lighting, and other design changes. Reconstruct Appian as an attractively landscaped thoroughfare with improved storm drainage, redesign travel lanes, curb improvements, new streetscape furniture, trees and landscaping. There is a lot of stuff in here about exactly that topic. And if anyone thinks there should be more after reading through this, we're happy to hear it.
But in terms of actual implementation timeline of that being
Well,
along Appian Way or bikes.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. This is a 20-year plan, right? So, I mean, it's, as I said, part of the plan is vision and aspiration. Part of it is, pragmatism. So, what the thing about a general plan, what having all this in there helps with, and when we go back to the topic of money, is that the county doesn't have money on hand often to do all these sorts of things, but all the time the state or the federal government or whomever is having grant applications. People are giving away money all the time to do these sorts of improvements. We apply for many grants at the county and receive them. So having it in your general plan is important because it shows the agency or the entity that is providing the grant that you have this as your policy, that your board of supervisors has adopted this, that this is your goal. And so it it helps with obtaining grants. It also, having it in here is important when a developer comes in and they say, they want to build something. We say, well, you have to do this. Oh, I don't want to do that. Yeah, well, there's a policy right here that says you have to. And so, it's part of the regulatory framework to require those sorts of things. But yeah, timeline, I mean, it's anyone's guess. It's when you're relying on developers to come in and spend their money to do it, or you're relying on grant money for a lot of these. I mean, that's very hit and miss. I mean, the other one that, if people want to, is you can set up a special tax district and tax yourselves to do these sorts of improvements. And some communities do that.
Thank you. Before we get Heather's question related to what you just said, I wonder if the county has a common pot that gives all the unincorporated areas, or we have to tax ourselves. Like Alamo is unincorporated, El Sobrante is unincorporated, but the gap is huge.
Right. Well, part of that has to do with property taxes and how much, obviously some communities bring in more in property taxes. Alamo might actually have a special tax district. I don't know that off the top of my head, but one of the things in this general plan that's new, going back to the topic of environmental justice, that law SB 1000 that I mentioned, is that the state has also now said there are certain communities in your jurisdiction that need more attention and more investment. And the state developed a tool. It's called CalEnviro Screen, and you go into this online program, and they've looked at every census tract in the state, and they score it based on all sorts of things. Hazards. It's like 20 some odd indicators, as they call them, and they come up with a score. Whether there's pollution, whether there are socioeconomic indicators, language spoken, all sorts of things, and they come up with a score. And if you hit a score of 75 or greater, you are called, in the state law, a disadvantaged community. We're actually going to use a term, different term, impacted community, because people don't really like to be called a disadvantaged community. But those communities, by law, are going to receive a greater attention, whether that is investment in infrastructure. Well, no, it is going to be investment in infrastructure and services to sort of to lift them up to the level of other communities in the county. We have 8 of those. El Sobrante is not one of them.
Okay, thank you. Heather and Mickey, please.
Yeah, so Will, this might not actually be a question for you. It might be a question for other people. I saw a document that was about 40 pages long and showed a lot of what people would like as a modifications to Appian Way. Was that part of the previous general plan, or is that something else? Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
I think you're talking about the general plan and just period, I believe. And it might be the old one.
It showed photos of like that gas station on Appian Way being transformed. Yeah, I can't find it anymore.
There are a few planning documents for El Sobrante, but let me see if it's one that I'm thinking of here. Because there's the planned unit district zoning and design guidelines for El Sobrante. So I'm going to screen share again real quick. I don't know if is this the document that you're referring to?
Probably.
It was adopted in 2013, and he says about 40. Well, this is 102 pages long, but it does have in it, as you can see. I mean, it is the design guidelines for the community. I mean, it's got all sorts of maps. I mean, you can see there's pictures strewn throughout. Here's the land use, the list of land uses that are allowed in El Sobrante. So I'm sorry I can't help you with a more specific answer. But this is the document that I'm thinking of.
Okay, so what is this document? Where do I find it?
So it's called the Downtown El Sobrante Planned Unit Development Zoning and Design Guidelines, and it is on the county's website. It's on my department's website. Let's see here.
I should add that we're going to share Will's email with everyone. So if you need more extensive, in detail answers, we are asking Will to please reply to emails.
Here, I'm going to screen share this screen from our website. You can see the URL up here, contracosta.ca.gov/4747/specific plans.
Could you put it in the chats, please, Will?
Yeah. Let's see here.
Yeah.
And so, as you can see down here, El Sobrante is one of those listed.
I appreciate it. Mickey, you're next. We cannot hear you. Unmute yourself, please. Not yet. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, does the general plan or policies address illegal dumping or?
Oh yeah.
littering, which is such a big problem here?
It is a huge problem across the county, and it's one of those things, you know, going back to this issue of money. As we've been working on this policy language, we just, you know, it's just one issue to deal with after another, and you know, we're looking at each other saying there's just got to be more money appropriated for these sorts of things. You know, so my department and the public works department are generally self-funded. So what I was going back, you know, again, going back to our earlier conversation, you know, we take in fees, and they run our departments. But really, when you look around, I mean, everyone has eyes, and they look around, and they see other communities, and they say, well, how come they have street trees and we don't? Or how come they have, you know, whatever amenity or improvement and we don't? Or how come they don't have a bunch of heaping piles of trash everywhere and we do? You know, you got to start saying, well, maybe more money needs to be thrown at some of these issues. It can't just be that, you know, self-funded departments, you know, try and handle them on their own. This is something that the board of supervisors, I mean, there's a whole task force that was created by the board. I think it definitely involves our department. It involves public works, I believe the sheriff, and I don't know who else is part of it. But actually, one of my colleagues whose contact information was listed at the end of my presentation, she her normal job with our department is working in solid waste, and that's the you know, so solid waste disposal, which is what the illegal dumping part of the task force is her. So her name is Joanne Marie Ricasata. So I don't know if were you planning on I haven't emailed the PowerPoint to you, but I could put up Joanne Marie's contact information in the chat here, though. She has more information on this than I. But yeah, I totally acknowledge this is a problem that we're trying to get our hands around.
Yeah, I'm a member of the El Sobrante Municipal Advisory Council, and we have a subcommittee on illegal dumping and littering, trying to get more of a handle on it. And it seems to me like it's going to take beyond, you know, Contra Costa. It's going to, you know, maybe get some state or federal monies to create a conservation corps, something that of groups dedicated to actual cleanup. We have volunteers who are doing it, but doesn't seem to, you know, I think we need to go bigger than that. But I was also wondering if the plan has plans for the homeless population.
Yeah, so we haven't gotten to that yet, and the reason is, so going back to that list of the elements or chapters, one of them is housing. That's the one that the state requires us to update on a consistent basis. You don't ever have to update the other ones, other than when they pass a law that says add this to the safety element or add this to the land use element. So the housing element has to be updated every 8 years. We're doing that as part of this effort as well, but we just started. We actually had intended to be done with the general plan and then do the housing element, but with everything that's happened, you know, that plan went out the window. So so when we do the housing element work, that's where that issue will be addressed. And we're just about to start on that. We think that there's going to be, our schedule has us having a study session with the Board of Supervisors on it in November. That would be the first public meeting on it, I think. But then only a few months later, I think in February, having a draft of the housing element that would start going public. So we're going to be developing it real quick here over the next few months.
Well, I have a question myself, but before that, there's a question in the chat that does the plan help donors make tax deductible charitable grants or donation to community and neighborhood projects and get tax deduction?
No.
Okay, that's cruel. I wish.
Well, I mean, help in what? I guess I'm trying to look back through.
I'm not saying
No,
you're
I know.
cruel. I'm saying that
Does
you're
plan help
wrong.
donors make tax deduction to charitable?
Yeah, that was me. And what I was saying is, you mentioned that if things are already mentioned in the plan, that it makes it easier to get certain things done. And I thought you mentioned something about tax deductibility. So I didn't mean does the county help? I meant if you've got something and it's consistent with the county plan, does that help a donor get a tax
Oh.
deduction when they file.
No,
Not trying to put
I don't
work on
think-
you.
I mean, I'm not a CPA, but I mean, I've never heard of that. That's all. I'll just leave it at that. I've never heard of that being the case. But don't take my word for it.
Thank you. I have a question about San Pablo Creek. So your department has the word conservation in
Yeah.
it. I wonder if this plan has any provisions for remediation, conservation, and enhancement of San Pablo Creek. It's very vital to the community. It's the only sort of the gem of the nature we have in our community, and nobody can see it. And there's illegal dumping in it. We don't know what's going on with the wildlife. We could plant trees around it to help with climate, and we were talking about climate justice and everything. So if you could please tell us what the plan has provisioned
Yeah.
with regards to San Pablo Creek.
So one of the policies in that community profile that I put up a little while ago, number 10, is conserve and restore portions of San Pablo Creek as a community open space, natural resource, and visual amenity. In addition, conserve the natural elements of other local creeks such as Appian and Wilkie Creek. So,
Wonder-
and this is actually something that's been in the general plan since 1991.
uh-huh.
And it's being carried forward. You know, there was actually language in the existing general plan about building like a sort of a path or like a boardwalk along the creek. I think we may have removed that specific language, and I don't know why. I don't know if that was because of community input at all those meetings, or if
No,
we
it's the other way around. We wanted actually. You should have added instead of removing it, please.
let me see. Let me just make sure.
We just submitted a petition to Supervisor Joya regarding it, having a creekside community park and trail along San Pablo Creek that connects to the Bay Trail.
Okay. Let me see if it's one of the actions here. It's not in the policies.
And also please guide us, what should the community do to urge you and your department to enhance the language and actually do more work on that?
Well, you can email me directly with these sorts of, oh, no, it's still in here. I apologize. It's in the actions. Continue to explore the feasibility of a creekside boardwalk and park along publicly owned segments of San Pablo Creek.
Wonderful. So about the part you mentioned, conserve portions of creek or Conserve Creek provide public access.
Yeah.
Where is the public access? Right now, there is none, zero.
Well, it says conserve and restore portions of the creek as a community open space, natural resource, and visual amenity.
Right. So what is it?
I don't follow. What do you mean? What is it?
Specifically, how is it going to be done?
Oh, well, so, you know, these policies, for example, if a developer comes in and has a property that is adjacent to the creek, I mean, sometimes it's not an action, it's an inaction, so to speak. So, you know, if someone has a piece of property, it abuts the creek, and they say, oh, I want to pave all the way up to it and do this, do that, you know, that would affect the creek. You know, we point to this policy and we say, hey, it says conserve and restore. So, you know, that would be the conserve part, right? So you can't go up to the creek. You can't, you know, do whatever it is that your project proposes to do that would damage the creek. So that's kind of how that works. Now the restore, you know, that is an action, right? That's so and this goes back to, you know, finding money, you know, public works projects that would do just that. You know, back in, you know, following World War II, right, when all the suburbanization was happening, engineers wanted to put creeks in culverts and pipes and concrete channels and all this and get the water out of here. And there's that's being completely reversed now. So, you know, we're going back to the natural environment, removing these improvements, as they're called. And so, you know, it's just having it in there so that when a grant comes along that says, here's $2 million to, you know, restore a natural waterway, it's like, aha, well, here it is. Here's a policy that says restore San Pablo Creek. And so that's, you know, it's not always describing the action. It's sort of, some of these are more abstract, you know, it's not saying restore it, and here's how A through Z. It's more that it's your goal to restore it, it's your policy to restore it. So as the opportunities come along to restore it, you're gonna jump on those opportunities.
So, okay, I have two questions for you. One, you talked about public access. Right now, both sides of the creek are private properties. In order to provide public access, we need to purchase one of those lots, properties to provide, otherwise there is no way. It's in the plan. Can we urge you, your department, to please actively take action to get a grant budget from somewhere, do something to provide that public access? And we have a very good candidate, actually. There's a lot for sale at a very good price. We would like to have a community park over there. Creekside public access, restore the creek. I mean, all the things you mentioned in your wonderful plan, we are just one step away. We need your help and support. How do we get there?
So really, that actually goes a little bit beyond me and even our department. I would really approach Supervisor Joya about that, because it's one thing to have the plan, but also, this gets into like the Public Works Department is the one that actually purchases land. They're the or disposes of public land for the county. So that's a different department, and I don't want to be too bureaucratic here, but so I mean, we have the plan. They're also subject to the plan, but they're the ones who do the purchasing. Of course, they have to get the authorization of the Board of Supervisors. They can't just go and purchase a piece of property on the county's behalf.
Understand, but we do need your support. We want you to be
Yeah.
on our side.
Oh,
Write
yeah.
a letter or something urgent that it is in the plans. It needs to be done. So
Yeah, I agree, and I think I'm not one who I really try not to give a bunch of bureaucratic speak and nonsense. I mean, the existing general plan is 30 years old, and a lot of it wasn't done. and so I realized that when we say to people, oh, well, it's in the plan and it's another 20-year plan, there's 50 years of things that may not be done. So I think though that this time around things have just changed. The whole the whole philosophy around planning has changed. I mean, there's much more emphasis on the natural environment, on preservation, as I said before, on not sprawling out anymore, but looking inward, the mixed use, the higher density, packing it in a little more to save our natural environment and rehabilitating the natural environment in our communities. So, and I think I think it has to do with the people too. People who went to planning school in the 70s learned how to build sprawling subdivisions. People who went to planning school in the 90s, like me, learned something different.
okay, before I get Angela's question, I just wanted to say that we are working actually with Supervisor Joya. He's very supportive, and we have plans, but what we need from you is your support from your department, please, specifically, and I hope we can count on that.
Well, someone should send me the parcel number that you're talking about.
I will. I definitely will. Thank you very much. Angela, your turn.
One more question. You had mentioned that when you were speaking about trash and dumping, that a lot of areas are self-funded. And I'm sure this probably might be above your pay grade, but when it comes to the dumpers, there's not really good, current laws out there in order to prevent them. Like right now, if you have cameras set up, unless you get a clear image of the individual who's doing the dumping, nothing can be done, no matter if you have the license plate of the car or things like that. Now, in my opinion, if we could, as a county, or we can't do it as a city. So as the county, if we could implement our own fines, say, or change the way that dumpers are fined, instead of having a picture of the face, if we're able to put levy fines on vehicles that are caught on camera doing dumping, we would be able to collect a lot more funds. So like I said, I'm not sure what your knowledge on implementation of something like that is, but If you have any insight, that'd be great.
I really have none because that's more of a law enforcement thing. And really the general plan and just throughout this whole process that we're already, 2.5 years into now, is that what I continually am saying to people is ultimately this is a land use plan. And while all of these topics are, they affect our communities, this document only has its reach is only so far. And so we can try and address dumping insofar as it's a land use issue. Sometimes that would mean, are there sufficient places to take your things that you no longer need, like recycling centers and transfer stations and landfills and that kind of thing. Those are land use issues. But when it comes to that sort of thing where it's the law and
the self-funding part.
Self-fund. I think, yeah, you mentioned that. I mean, well, there's the county codes, right? Which, what they say about illegal dumping, I'm not familiar with. But when it's like self-funding, or you meant like my department or communities?
Yeah, well, your departments. I mean, you said you had.
Yeah.
I thought you had mentioned that you work off fines and collection of
fees.
Oh, okay.
So like developer fees and that kind of thing.
I gotcha.
Now some parts of our department that have more specific duties, like they might get federal money. I mean, we do have some parts of our department that are not from fees. It's they have their charge is something specific, and there's state or federal funds there for that purpose, and we get the money to implement whatever that is. But I don't know when it comes to illegal dumping and the solid waste where all that funding comes from. It must come from those, because we're not charging developers to deal with solid waste. So but and the other, just to add on a little to this, one of the other issues, it's not just the law enforcement part of it, but one of the reasons people illegally dump is that the fees are so high at landfills or at the places that you can take these things. So they just dump it on the side of the road. And that's a thing that I think the county is also trying to, address somewhat, but we don't run the landfills, and they're private companies. And
yeah, unfortunately we filled up our landfill. So our local landfills maxed out.
West
they gotta
County.
ship it out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably all, it goes to Keller Canyon, and it even goes outside our county.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. As Serge mentioned, if you're interested in focusing on vitalization of the triangle adjacent to Good Tables, please contact Serge or me. We have a meeting on July 7th and 13th. With that, I would like to ask Will Nelson again. Thank you very much for joining us. And now we see you have a young baby. Actually, you contributing today with us. I'm really grateful. Very wonderful information, and we hope to have you over with our community again next year, sometime around this time, and talk about it as it progresses. I'll definitely be in touch with you, and we'll send that lots information, Appian number to you, and we'll communicate about it.
Please do, and I really encourage everyone to sign up for the Envision 2040 website to get on our mailing list.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks again for having me.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Okay,
Have a nice
bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Oh.